Hello and welcome to Road Redemption. I am Annemie, and as you might have seen from those flash cards, what are they called? The splash screens, that's what I'm looking for. I have turned the sound off so as to try and not get content ID'd on this thing. So this is Road Redemption. This is a game about racing motorbikes, about hitting people on those motorbikes, and about dying, because it is a rogue-lite game, or possibly a road-lite. So this is supposed to be a spiritual sequel to, I've forgotten the actual name, Road Rash, Road Rage, something along those lines. I've not played it. The only similar game I've played is that motorbike sequence in Final Fantasy VII. So let's see how it goes. I've played a little bit of this last night and today, and we're going to play a bit now. So as you can see here, it supports up to 4 players. I've only tried it with one, so I don't know how the experience changes. You have a number of bikes you can choose. Some of them come as upgrades from your skill tree. These are permanent buffs which will keep over even if your biker dies, and others are for progressing in the campaign. I didn't particularly like the stats of the first bike upgraded, so I'm going to go with the standard bike, and you also upgrade. With upgrades you get different riders. So I'm going to be Nitro Punk because I like his starting weapon. As you can see here, the roguelite elements are fully in place here. You have a fully randomized campaign. Because of one of the upgrades I got, I start at level 3 of this campaign, so you don't have to go through everything all the time if you've collected enough experience. And this is one of the types of events you will encounter. These are races. These typically involve you having to race against other people and finish in the top 3 against a number of different factions. These are the starting area factions. You've got your fairly standard racing controls. You're driving around, you've got your acceleration, you've got your braking to turn corners, and you've got directional attacks, which can knock people off their bikes, and it feels good. You like hitting people off things while going very quickly? Oh. Physics. Realistic physics isn't this game's primary concern, let's put it that way. Got your nitro boost. But yes, this whole thing is quite satisfying. You've got various people with icons over their heads. They've got different, let's say, they're kind of like pickups, except that you have to hit them in order for that to happen. You've also got a block move, by the way, so I should have been able to block that person's sword attack, but I didn't. And there we see the first of, and actually the second of this game's problems. Crashing, it will, ooh, that was a bounce. Crashing will cost you health, which you'd expect, that's fine. But it also starts you far behind everyone else, which you would also expect, and that is also fine. My issue with the crashes in this game are that if say you crash, and then you boost to try and catch up with the rest of the pack, there's a shortcut there, I'm going to take that, and you try to catch up with the rest of the pack and crash on the way there, then once you're out of nitro, you're in a bit of a pickle. Nitro does not automatically regenerate. It comes back if you knock people off their bikes, but there doesn't seem to be an unending stream. So if you've been knocked back, there aren't that many people you can hit, and you're just left pootling along by yourself very slowly, trying to get back to gameplay. Because make no mistake, this is no racing game. It's not about racing lines. You might occasionally brake to turn a tight corner, but that's about it. And it's just not fun. It seems to punish you doubly for crashing, particularly when it's a little bit like Burnout in that respect, in that crashes are inevitable. You are going to crash. There is going to be a car that you didn't see that you will hit because you're concentrating on all of your other riders and your own nitro and your health and blocking and so on. There's a lot to keep track of, so you will crash. And you are punished quite a lot for that, which is a shame. The second of the problems, which I mentioned back there, which is now possibly well and truly gone, is that the larger vehicles, the cars and the lorries and so on, you can almost get glued to the back of them.
Give up now, Jackal! That bounty's ours!
And it's very difficult to come unstuck from them without coming to a complete halt. Which is, again, a shame. Okay, so we finished that race. Came in first. Yay, we got some experience and we got some cash. Your experience carries over... is what will get you your bonuses that carry over. Cash will get you temporary boosts just for this rider. So, for instance, you could increase the rate at which you gain nitro when you hit people. You could upgrade one of your weapons. You could just get more attack damage. I tend to like getting things which increase the experience gain because that will allow me to get more permanent buffs. So I'm going to get this Midas Fest. I might also increase my attack damage, and I've got a little bit left. Why not let's get a lucky rabbit's foot. And let's see what the next event is. This is a second of, I think I've isolated maybe about 4 different types of event in this game. This is one of the ones that's less common. And as you can see, all that I need to do
a lot of activity
is
on the
not
police bands.
Die.
Watch out for the cops.
So here, the police will be pretty suicidal. They will come at me from the oncoming lanes. We see one there, and... well, I actually drove into that one, so that was my fault. Yeah, this is what can happen. You can just crash and crash and crash. And it does get somewhat frustrating as the crashes themselves aren't particularly fun. That's one of the things that Burnout did right. And I was actually reading something about this not too long ago on, actually, about D&D, and that's you need to make your failures as fun, if not more fun, than your successes. So I also don't like the police tasers. It disables you. It disables you for a few seconds. And I've not seen... I think that it might be unblockable. Maybe I've just not tried blocking. Wow, that was physics. Maybe I've just not tried blocking them, but I think they're unblockable and they stun you for a little bit. Which can be incredibly frustrating, particularly when you're in a mass of people, or when that happens. So we might not actually be able to get to the end of this checkpoint without dying. That's a lot of sounds. Okay. You also have a number of weapons. So for instance, I've currently got my heavy melee weapon equipped. If you look in the bottom right, there are 4 different slots, which I'll show you about once we've actually gotten onto the next one, because I wasn't entirely sure I was going to get there. Okay, so we got some money. And a loading screen. The loading screens on the PC aren't actually too bad loading times, but they were really bad on my laptop, even when the graphic settings were turned down massively. And this isn't the prettiest game to start with, but even with it turned down where you get almost sort of Google GIFs of explosions happening, and they look dreadful with the graphic settings turned down. But the loading times there they're inexcusable. It's ridiculous. Okay, so we got some things. This is the 3rd of the types of missions. I don't know why I just mimed the number 3. If you were looking at me in person, you would know what the number 3 was and wouldn't need the visual stimulus, but here you don't even get to see me, so that was a thing. So here we just have to kill a number of police.
Just trying to get past him alive.
So the game is being nice with its random generation of events here, letting me show you all the different types that I've found so far. But this can be a bit of a pain with the don't let the targets escape sorts of missions, in that you firstly need to catch up to them, and they can be quite a way ahead. But this will let me show you some of the other weapons. So first off, you get guns! And as you can see, that was not a great explosion. Let's knock that person off.
Damn.
I mean, it looks
Guess he won't be collecting
dreadful. Ooh, that was lucky. Let's see if I can show you bombs. That's another type of explosion.
Nice.
Another type of explosion? Of course it's a type of explosion. I'm not too sure I'm going to survive this, but...
Looks
No.
like the little jackal's dead. What a pity.
So you've got those, and you've got bladed weapons. And you've got different types in each class, which you can access via the D-pad by pressing it a number of times. So these are the permanent upgrades. You might not be able to guess that from the title of the screen, which says permanent upgrades. You've got fairly standard trees going on here. You have to unlock both of these previous branches in order to move on to the next branches, so you can't just go in really deep and try to get all the best stuff at the end. So let's get some more experience game. Why not? That's what I like to do. So it can be pretty difficult if you're in a large clustering of enemies. So I went Nitropunk last, and let's show you Dutch. This is your starter person, so everyone's going to play as Dutch if they get this game. See, they've got different beginning stats, but also different weapons, and I want to show you some of the different weapons that you have. Because we saw heavy melee, mostly is what I was using there. But Dutch uses some of the light stuff, and also, I think, always seems to get a long melee weapon, whereas the Nitropunk never seems to get that. Okay, so this is another
I've sent a
race
few of our
type.
boys to help you out.
So here we see
Try
a
not to
long
kill
weapon. Hold on. Oh, that's just a number. For some reason I was massively misreading that.
Hell
So they have a
yeah.
bit more reach,
Show 'em what the
but I
tackles
don't
are
know if
made.
they've quite got the same power, or they might be slower or something like that. They certainly don't seem to do as much damage, that's for sure, as the heavy, which is why I like the heavy. So you've got a number of weapons, so I could have this long one in my light slot, or I could have... Ooh, that's someone of my own side. Or I could have this shorter light melee weapon. I would imagine that it's faster or something like that. Well, that could have gone badly. I've not seen any long heavy melee weapons. I'd be surprised if they didn't exist, but maybe it is just a long melee type. So, as said before, this is all
You're gonna pay!
randomized. The track's randomized, you're not learning track layouts or anything like that. Got swords here, but they're not good against people with helmets, which is why I don't tend to use them too much. They can knock off helmets, as you can see there.
Hey, that's one of ours.
Well, I'm sorry. What was I saying before? So yeah, it's got a different layout, nominally. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happened to me last time. You can just respawn on the track, but it does. And there fairly quickly. So yes, it's nominally a different layout, but I couldn't tell you whether it was or not. It all feels very similar. So there are a number of different stages, which I've seen. And none of them feel particularly good. They don't look nice, they don't feel satisfying to drive around, it doesn't feel like you're exploring an area. Clearly this is going for a sort of desert. Wow, that was a thing. And then I just passed through a metal girder. The obvious comparison here would be a Mad Max type of scenario, which the Australian or New Zealand, I still can't tell the difference. I've lived a year and a half in Australia, no idea about the difference between the accents, except that New Zealanders tend to have better grammar. But that's very evocative of the whole Mad Max idea along with the combat. But you come into sort of snowy areas, and it just looks like it's the same area, but they've sprinkled some talcum powder over it. It doesn't feel like you've gone to a new area, let's put it that way. There's also a rooftop area, which I've seen, and that just becomes a little bit awkward because then you've got gaps between roofs. Most of the jumps are alright, but you occasionally just smash into the side of a wall, and that just gets more frustrating than fun. And it also still doesn't look that good. Let's see if I can beat this person with my nitro, because I'm coming up to the end, and I know that because that bridge, that tunnel, is always near the end. Which is part of the reason why...
Nice work.
Oh.
Way to show those Reapers some well-earned revenge.
Why I don't feel like the randomness, the random track layouts is really randomizing all that much. Especially as you're not paying that much attention to the layout. You're moving around the corners when there are corners, but it's not about racing lines. What do I want here? Oh, there's nothing here that I particularly like. I might upgrade my light melee weapon. Could increase my attack damage. Good nitro injector. Let's do both of those. Why not? Let's see if we can find the last type. No, it's another race.
These Reapers may be tough, but they're shit when it comes to speed. Step on it.
The races are kind of my favourite event because they're a bit simpler and they feel like there are more enemies around to keep your nitro up if you feel you're lagging behind. One of the other things I find kind of weird is you'll be speeding up to an enemy, and then the enemy will seem to slow down or speed up massively depending on whether you're going past them or not, so that you end up going at roughly the same speed, which... well, there goes my body. Which makes sense for a combat game, but still feels odd and means that it's harder to gauge when you should be slowing down to pull up next to people. This is a particular import with the larger vehicles, the vans and the cars and so on, because they, unsurprisingly, are less vulnerable to your melee attacks. You generally either want to hit them with
Nice takedown. Keep it up.
explosives or firearms. This is just getting into be a bit of a scrum. Ah, well, I've lost this. Well, this gets... oh, yes.
I know these Reapers are tough, but they're also dumb. Use that to your advantage next time.
So when you fail your objective, you don't just automatically lose and die, but you lose some health. Which I quite like, actually. I think that's a reasonable trade-off, and you don't get as much money and experience. Well, can't really afford anything here. Well, it seems like all it's giving me is race. This what
You got some friendlies up ahead. Watch your fire.
is what it tends to do.
Careful.
I would really like there to be
That's one of
more race types. So, we've seen 3 of the different types. The last one... oh, yeah, so, and also the takedown ones. I should mention this. There are also occasionally boss missions at the end of each area. And they will take the form of another one of those takedown missions, except that the person involved is a lot more difficult to kill. But yes, the 4th of the... that person's just wielding a axe. Oh, this is also going to be good. So the 4th of the types is just a time trial. And this person is now pushing me off the road. Thank you for that. Which is fine, it's just a race by any other name. So this is a pain. When you're being shot at... let's try that again. There's no... you just stayed there waiting for me, you... well then. There's no real way to defend against it, and I know that you're given guns as well, but I'd really rather that neither of us had guns. I feel like that would be a more pleasant experience. So they're getting stuck behind that car again. Oh, and the aiming is also not good. There's no form of auto lock-on. So as you can see here, I'm having to point the reticule where I want the shots to go. And that just feels like I'm trying to do too much. Let's have that back. And I get stuck behind another car and just about manage to get out from it. So yeah, I think... Oh yeah, you can kick as well. I always forget about kicking. It's effective, but I forget about it because hitting people just seems to be a bit better.
Keep smashing heads. The less Reapers to worry about, the better.
So, would I suggest that you get this game? I don't think I would. It feels frustrating and some of the controls are really not intuitive. I would quite like it if the left attack, right attack thing were mapped to something physically left and right on the controller. Possibly something along the lines of the shoulder buttons. Let's just go past this person because we're at the end here.
Nice driving. At this rate, you'll catch that assassin before these other fucks.
I think maybe have it on L1 and R1, or just automatically have your bike accelerate and have the attacks on the triggers and maybe have some sort of brake button, because there's not going to be a point where you're not really accelerating unless you're braking. You're not wanting to be that... There's not that much finesse going on here, right? Let's just get that. This is one of the Take Out the Gang Leader ones. It happens at the end of each area.
We're almost to the territory border. Take out the Reaper boss, and there's one less gang to fight for that bounty.
And even if it hadn't set up that way, because people like it different ways. I can see people liking X and Y for left attack, right attack. Yes, I am playing on controller because this is the sort of thing which would just feel better on a controller. Even if it decided that its default controls like that, have an option to remap it. You're on PC, for crying out loud. What does it cost you? Also, what's not particularly intuitive is that you have to double tap your accelerator button in order to boost. Oh, I should be killing that person, shouldn't I? Yeah, I've got a shotgun. Oh. But it's not very intuitive. Let's brake a little bit. Let's get behind them. Uzi's better anyway.
You fight like the cunt you are!
So I guess my final thoughts on this would be that... So I've been waiting all day for an Amazon package. Getting some files to try and break out of a prison. And earlier I was playing this game because, like, okay, I'm waiting for things to happen. Might as well get some practice in. Oh, this is not going well. I'm probably going to die here. There we go. So, I was playing this earlier, and I was, just to get a bit of a feel of it, and I lasted maybe about 20 minutes before having this overwhelming urge to play anything else. It's an exercise in frustration for me. I imagine it's actually probably a lot better at multiplayer, because then the randomness that goes on can be laughed off with a friend. There's one particular type of level which comes up quite a lot where you're supposed to be hallucinating or something like that. And let's get some more health gain. And the result of this is mechanically cars start raining from the sky, and they fall on the road, and then they start driving off, and that will just cause you to crash. You won't be able to see everything, you won't be able to predict how they move necessarily. And that's the sort of wackiness which works well with a friend if you've got a glass of wine in your hand or something like that. It works less if you're trying to actually get through this as a single player experience. I think those are most of my thoughts on the game. I like this permanent upgrade tree, but if I want something with that, I'll probably just play Rogue Legacy, to be honest. But yes, if you think it's the sort of thing which you would like, it is available on Steam right now. And you can get this for money. However, I don't think I'm going to be playing this much more after this video is finished, in all honesty. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. This will allow me to produce more of them. And I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day. Goodbye.